As Democrats consider future leaders of the party, former President Obama shared this message for Team Blue while speaking to Pod Save America this weekend.
I think we do get into trouble. Look, I used to get into trouble whenever, as you know, you guys know well, whenever I got a little too professorial and started when I was behind a podium as opposed to when I was in a crowd. There were times where I'd get sound like I was given a bunch of policy gobbledygook, and that's not how people think about these issues. They think about them in terms of the life I'm leading day to day. How does politics how is it even relevant to the things that I care most deeply about? My family, my kids, work that gives me satisfaction, having fun, not being a buzzkill, right?
That's a lesson for the Democratic
Party. And sometimes Democrats are, right? And they want some acknowledgement that life is messy and that all of us at any given moment can, say things the wrong way, make mistakes.
And this is a point that Obama has actually raised on numerous occasions. I've heard him give speeches before where he, what we're talking about here is the kind of woke, cancel culture-y, free speech stuff. He's chided student activists for shouting down speakers and for getting offended by things people might say that maybe they're problematic or offensive. And more later in that clip, he talks about how his own mother will say things sometimes that are like, are problematic, but how insane it would be to say that there's something wrong with her or crazy or deeply offensive about her. Like, older people just have a different way of talking. Everyone had a different way of talking until 5 minutes ago, when a small number of progressive activists decided that these are the new language rules, and if you say any of these things, you should be fired or expelled or basically everything short of arrested. And Obama makes this point over and over again, and it's a point I think the Democratic Party, or not even so much the party, but the people who speak on its behalf in terms of elite educational circles on Twitter, they should listen to that lesson, which is don't jump on people for these small little slights that no one agrees with this. No one, 80% of people, including within the Democratic coalition, think political correctness has gone too far and cancel culture has gone too far, and on and on and on.
I mean, perfect is the enemy of the good. And to your point, former President Obama has made this clear multiple times because the Democratic Party leadership in many cases has, and sometimes voters as well, have the habit of basically eating their own. Should you make a mistake, should you say something that falls out of line with, I guess, the normal phrasing, or out of line with where current events are going right now, even if it was a mistake, a flub, something like that, then your career could totally be upended in a way that we're not seeing happen for Republicans. One, because Republican voters stick with their people even if they're hella problematic. We've seen that with Herschel Walker. We've seen that with Dr. Oz. We've seen that with several people, but even Donald Trump. With that being said, I think that this is also a former president who fully understands, because of his multicultural background, because of the several places he's lived, that people think differently. And it's okay to have a difference of opinion, and the open marketplace of ideas is necessary. That's what college is all about. You're going to have people who come to your campus who speak on issues that you may not agree with. You don't have to go to said event. Or maybe you go to said event and you learn something at the event. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just really don't like this speaker. That is absolutely fine. And I think that what he's trying to get across, especially in this midterm election year, is that you might not always have a perfect candidate. Humans aren't perfect. Imperfection is what makes the world go round. With that being said, you have to rise above the muck in terms of these, I would probably call them purity tests of sorts. The Democratic Party has, and many voters actually have decided to utilize.
And they're not even issue-based purity tests. They're communications-based purity tests. They're what did you tweet, 18 years ago when you were 5 years old, or then, no, you can't, sorry, you have to be destroyed now.
Which has happened even outside of the political space. We've seen it with certain journalists who would tweet something when they were in college, 18, 19 years old, then it comes back to bite them how many years later. Yeah. And I think that part
it happens to working people.
Every day. And now, granted, there are certain things you absolutely should not say.
Yeah.
Full disclaimer, if you have something, if you're anti-Semitic tropes, if you're a raging racist, there are certain things that I feel should be rebuked consistently. But we're seeing people get caught up on small idiosyncrasies, and it's just not that serious.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I always bring this up because progressives tend to think, and I often agree with them, in like rehabilitation, and I mean, they believe in letting people out of prison, and that they should be able to vote and participate in society, right? Many progressives support bills that you can't even ask someone if they're like in a job application whether they've been in prison, that kind of thing. So I think it's weird to have that kind of standard for people who've actually committed crimes and gone to prison, but be like, no, you should be unemployable if you ever tweeted something problematic in your life. You should not be able to work. How does that make any sense? Why is the crime for having said something sexist or racist is from the progressive standpoint would be worse than the punishment for like committing assault or something?
We have to be real in our country that racism and sexism has existed throughout our country's history and several other countries as well. And there should be a penalty for that. Should you not be able to work your entire life? Probably not. But I do believe that depending on what you're doing, if you are a professor of a large or even a small institution, coming out and saying racist or anti-Semitic things are probably not the move. But those are isolated examples. My issue is that we're seeing people get cancel cultured, one, because they said something stupid, not necessarily something that is going to spawn anti-Semitic tropes or racism based in violence, because they said something ignorant. And there are a lot of ignorant people walking around for various reasons. And those people should be educated. I think you should course correct them, but not necessarily in their careers.
Right. If you're going to end the careers of everyone who's ignorant, like no one would work. We're all ignorant in some ways. We're all, and also people are not expected to be so up to date. I mean, what counts as, not so much, I don't think what counts as anti-Semitic has changed very much, but what counts as, for instance, I get a lot of criticism from activists on behalf of the transgender community. These are ideas that are still in flux, that have not been accepted by necessarily everyone, with what gender means and what sex means, and all those, like, these are being hotly debated, and some in the very wokest progressive circles are asserting that no, if anyone who falls short of this line is ignorant and evil and bad. And I'm looking like, well, almost everyone falls short of that line because this has not been accepted broadly enough yet. And I think a lot of these things still require conversation. I mean, we have a lot of conversations about this issue in particular on the show because it is still in flux and it's not been arrived at. And because terms
and acceptability have changed so much rapidly.
In the last 5 seconds.
Yeah, rapidly.
Since we started filming this, it changed.
You might not be someone who is, not you personally, the proverbial you, who is anti-trans, but one small segment or one comment can be taken in a very negative light that just 2 weeks ago was not seen in that same way.
And that's something Obama understands in a unique way, I think. He understands it better than a lot of people who speak for Democrats understand it. And I think that's part of why he was such a successful, he was the most successful Democratic political figure in memory. And I think that's part of it.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. All right, we'll have more Rising right after this. Stay with us.